Hello everyone, I'm Metro and we're going to have another look at some more beginners topics for the card game Hearthstone. Blizzard just released as a beta. Alright, now obviously some of these things might change before live, but first thing we are going to talk about is types of cards. Alright, there are three very general types of cards that will be all-encompassing of the entire game. Right, so first things first is Minion. Now Minion is basically something like this. Here I have hovered over Guardian of Kings. It is clearly something that can be summoned into play with the intent of dealing damage to the other team. Alright, staying on the field. You can never have more than 7 minions in play at one time, and any minion summoned beyond 7 will fizzle and not actually enter the field. Which is interesting, obviously, but mana costs, attack value on the left, health on the lower right. Alright, the attack is the amount of damage done by that minion if it attacks a target, obviously, and then the health is how much damage they can withstand if attacked directly by any type of card, essentially. Next up we have equipment, and we'll scroll back here to this, right here, Light's Justice. Now this actually gives your hero, right, what you're playing on, playing a paladin, a weapon, and allows it to become something that can deal damage as well. Right now equipment cards have mana cost as well. Heroes cannot directly attack without a weapon, so it has to have a weapon, it has to have attack, and it has to have something to swing with, basically. And the attack value is the amount of damage your hero does if it does attack. And also don't forget, if you attack another minion with your hero, it's going to be retaliated upon by the minion, so you'll take damage as well. Not necessarily something you want to do. But heroes do not actually retaliate damage, so that is very good. And then finally we have spells, right? So here's a great example. Holy Light, hovered over it. This is basically anything other than minions and equipment, right? So there's only 3 basic principles here to deal with. A subset would be including secrets, but we'll talk about that later on. But for now, it's essentially anything that you play that has an effect on the game that is not a minion or a weapon. And it's just going to be a one-off use. 2 mana cost here, exactly what I'm showing off. Holy Light, it's going to restore 6 health. Seems a bit OP, but anyway, yeah, that's a spell, right? So those are the 3 general topics in terms of the cards. You can move on to things that are a bit more specific, right? Obviously, the card rarity is something that you'll want to take into consideration, although not really too important for gameplay. Just realize that the gems in the middle do indicate such, right? So I don't think I have any there, but I know I have a few here. You'll see the white is common. Okay, if it has nothing, that's part of the starter set that everybody in the game will have. Try to find. I guess I don't have any. Must be in a different deck. But anyway, yeah, if the blue, it's a blue gem, it's rare. Purple gem, it's epic, and orange is legendary. So in terms of, now we're going to move on to, this is probably the most important part, right? Specific card text effects. All right, now the text on the card is very important. It's not flavor. It actually does have a very important part. All right, so we're going to go through all of them. There's quite a list. In the description, though, is going to be the thread that is, saying all this stuff, right? It's got all the info that you need to read. So if you prefer to read it as well as listen along with me, that's fine. In the description is the link, though. So first thing you need to know about armor. Okay, now armor absorbs any source of damage to the hero. All right, so until the armor reaches 0. So a good example of that is the warrior deck, right? His hero ability gives him armor. So it's got 2 armor right now. I need to attack him. I have to do at least 2 damage before I can actually attack his health pool. All right. Obviously, the attack modifier is on the bottom left. We know that. Next text effect, Battle Cry. All right, now this is triggered immediately when the card enters play. Let's see if we can find a Battle Cry one here. Yeah, there's one right there. So here's a great example. Battle Cry triggers immediately when the card enters play. So as soon as I put this card into play, I gain the Battle Cry bonus. Restores 6 health to your team. But it's very important to realize that this does not activate from any other way other than you put it in play. Like, you wanted to put it in play, you played it from your hand, right? There's a few cards that like force cards out of your hand, stuff like that. That does not activate it. And you always must play the Battle Cry. So there's a good example is the Iron Beak Owl, which I do not currently have. Silence? Yeah, it silences any minion, right? And if the other person, the other player you're against, has no minions, you have to silence one of your own. Alright, but you could never use the Battle Cry on yourself. So if the owl is going to be the only thing in play, it just does nothing. Next up is charge. Let's find one with charge. There we go, charge right there. Stone Tusk Boar. Charge means a minion with charge may attack the turn it is summoned. So typically, Summoner Sickness, I'm not sure what they're calling it in this game, but one way or the other, you usually have to wait a full turn to attack. But with the charge ability equipped, you do not have to. You could immediately attack with this, which is really good for some cases, right? Next up is Death Rattle, all right? This is going to be, I don't think I have any of those yet for some reason. You don't start with any. But anyway, Death Rattle, okay, is going to be an effect that triggers when the minion is actually removed from battle. So quite the opposite, right? A player controlling the minion at the time of its removal receives the Death Rattle bonus. So, you know, it could be anything. There's a wide variety of options. But that's what Death Rattle does. All right, so it's the exact opposite of charge, or the exact opposite of battle cry, essentially, right? Next one up is Divine Shield. I know I got a few of those. Let's look at that. Yeah, here you go. So this is a spell that gives Divine Shield. But there are actually minions that have Divine Shield by default, and that is going to absorb the first damage taken by the minion. It's going to disappear after any damage is done. One use, all right? But there's still cards that quote-unquote destroy a minion, and those are not counted as damage abilities. Okay, so it's any type of flat damage that would be done to a minion is completely absorbed. So it's very good to counter or to combo this with a taunt card, right? Because not only is it going to be forced to attack, but he's going to be able to eat some damage as well. So that's very useful. Next up, we have Enrage. Okay, Enrage is triggered when the minion is below max health. So anytime it takes any type of damage but does not die, and the effect is going to remain until the minion is restored to full health, or dies, obviously. Effect can be re-triggered if a minion is again damaged below max health. So, you know, you could take the damage, he gets the Enrage bonus, he goes back to full health, Rage bonus goes away, but he takes more damage. You know, that's back and forth, right? So that's how that works. And it does not stack. Effect does not stack. Right, so you cannot get two Enraged effects at once, right? Obviously, that makes sense. Okay, now another one is Freeze. Target is frozen. This is mostly like a mage ability. I don't really play mage, so I'm not going to worry about that. But target is frozen for casting player's turn and the turn of their next opponent. So if I freeze a target, you know, freeze one of your minions, it cannot attack a whole turn. It misses an entire turn, which is pretty neat. Next Overload is up. The player using the card has X less mana available for their next turn. This is a shaman only ability. Overload does not trigger if the card is put into play through a card text effect or mechanic. Right, so once again, have to actually play the card for these things to take effect. You know. Now the next type of card we're going to talk about here with the text effect is Secret. This is very, very similar to what used to be known as trap cards in Yu-Gi-Oh, if I remember correctly, but the way they're played now, this is a bit more complicated. These types of cards are you put it in play, but it's a secret. Nobody knows what it is. The other team at least doesn't know what it is, and it's going to have an effect. So here's an example right here. Gotta find Redemption. Show you exactly what's up. Get off the screen. What are you doing? Get off the screen. Yeah, I can't get that off the screen for some reason. Anyway, where is it? Come on. Trying to make a video. Redemption. There we go. All right. So that's a secret card. When one of your minions dies, return it to life with 1 health. So I'm going to play that in my turn, and it's going to be hovering over my little icon, right? And on the top of it is going to be a question mark. So the other player knows you have played a trap card, but it doesn't know what it is. And then when the effect is triggered, it automatically triggers no matter what. So if it kills a minion that you didn't want to get rezzed, well, you're fucked. You've wasted the card, essentially, you know what I mean? So that's a tactical thing you have to deal with. So you may only have one of each secret in play at a given time, though you may have multiple different secrets. For example, you can have 1 ice barrier, 1 ice block, but not 2 ice barriers. All right. If multiple secrets are on the battlefield and triggered at the same time, they are resolved in the order at which they were cast on the battlefield originally. And in order for a secret to be triggered, all conditions listed on the trigger have to be met. For example, assume a minion attack your hero, and both the explosive trap played first and misdirection is in play. The explosive trap will trigger, dealing 2 damage to all enemies. It resolves the destruction of the attacking minion, then misdirection never triggers. Okay, so it's kind of complicated. This is probably the most complicated part of the game itself. right? These types of cards, at least. So if you want, once again, if you want to read more, thread in the description. Next effect that we're talking about is silence, and this is going to flat out remove all text and non-aura buffs from the target. So, we're talking about cards that have, right, like this, right? All other Murlocs have +1 attack. So if I did like a Murloc cleave, I could silence that Murloc so that does not happen. All right. And silence effects are technically not healed, but can remove instances of damage. Let's look at some in-game examples, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, so I want to, so I put Hammer of Wrath, right? Or, something like that, Blessing of Kings on the target. That can be silenced. Silence can be cast on it. So if I buffed him 4/4 and then silence the minion, he goes back to what he was originally. All right, and once again, all detailed in the thread if you do want to read more. But other than that, let's see what else we got. We got Stealth. All right, now Stealth is an interesting one. A minion with Stealth cannot be specifically targeted by an enemy hero, minion, or spell, but the minion can be affected by AoE and random damage. Okay, so I assume what that means is, I'm going to attack you with the card. That's fine. But you cannot attack me. You cannot attack it directly. Only through AoE abilities, perhaps like Consecration. Right, so that's pretty useful. I think that's more common with the Druid decks, or perhaps maybe the Rogue as well. But Taunt is now the next one that we're talking about. Now, this is very, very, very important. This is definitely the most important, in my opinion, of all. Right. So here's a great example. This Goldshire Footman. Taunt. You put him on the playing field, and no matter what, the other enemy, if they're going to attack, they have to attack him first. You cannot bypass him. You cannot attack other creatures, other minions you have. You cannot attack the other hero, right? So I cannot attack the person I'm playing against. I have to attack the taunted minion. And now this obviously beckons a lot of interesting concepts, right? You could really mix and match. You could add buffs to this guy, do all kinds of crazy stuff. But it has to happen. He cannot be bypassed. He has to be attacked. All right. And then finally, I think probably Transform is one of them, perhaps, but it's not really something that needs to be talked about in the scope of the card game. It's just the quote unquote, it's the name of what happens when you want it. Like there's a polymorph card or a hex card for the shaman that turns them into a sheep, a 1/1 sheep. They are now transformed into a sheep or a frog, depending on which card. And the effect is permanent. It does not run out. It just stays that way. But the final one that we do want to talk about here is Wind Fury. I know that's a very, very important one, and it's very basic as well. Minions can attack twice in one turn. That's fucking awesome, right? So I believe there's, the Shaman have buffs Wind Fury as well, but there's a few actual cards that contain Wind Fury. And think about how strong that could be. If you can buff that guy up, and if he could attack twice in one turn, as long as, if you're doing true damage right to their hero, you're attacking twice. You essentially have 2 cards. So very, very cool concept. But that is the entire list of, the card stuff. If you have any questions, once again, please do leave them in the comment section below. That's what it's all about, trying to learn. Everybody's learning here, so am I, actually, you know what I mean? So otherwise, enjoy it. Game should be out, I imagine it'll be out before the end of the year. Beta's rocking right now. And thread in the description if you want to read more about the specifics.